I think I messed up. Wait, I'm sure I did. Welcome to Young Elder TV, where UFOs, religions, Anunnaki, and black youth collide in a cosmic comedy. Meet Marcus, our fearless leader. He's an aspiring scientist and part-time alien enthusiast. Then there's Maya, his sister, a no-nonsense lawyer who secretly believes in ancient astronauts. Oh, and don't forget Grandma Pearl. She swears she had tea with an alien once. And finally, their quirky neighbor, Mr. Thompson, convinced he's a reincarnated god. With 3 million fans already hooked, Young Elder TV blends laughs with galactic mysteries. Ready to join the fun? Hit that subscribe button and dive into the cosmic chaos. Young Elder TV, where the stars align for comedy.
Today we will talk to you about the real men in black, known as Majestic 12. What is MJ12? Majestic 12 was a top-secret research and development/intelligence operation and group. It reports directly only to the President of the United States, who at that time was Dwight D. Eisenhower. Operations of the project were carried out under control of the group. This group first started with Adolf Hitler. Hitler had a secret service team who wore all black uniforms. They investigated UFO sightings for Hitler. The organization MJ12, to be the code name of a secret committee of scientists, military leaders, and government officials, formed in 1947 by an executive order by U.S. President Harry S. Truman to facilitate recovery and investigation of alien spacecraft. The concept originated in a series of supposedly leaked secret government documents, first circulated by ufologists in 1984. The following individuals were described in the Majestic 12 documents as designated members of Majestic 12: Lloyd Berkner, Detlev Bronk, Vannevar Bush, James Forrestal, Gordon Gray, Roscoe H. Hillenkoetter, Jerome Clark Hunsaker, Donald H. Menzel, Robert M. Montague, Sidney Sowers, Nathan F. Twining, and Hoyt Vandenberg. The 12 people who were part of the detail called MJ12, the real men in black. Members of the group were highly recommended by Dr. Vannevar Bush and C.C. James Forrestal. What is Project Blue Book? Project Blue Book was the code name for the systematic study of unidentified flying objects by the United States Air Force from March 1952 to its supposedly termination on December 17, 1969. The United States Air Force retired to the custody of the National Archives its records on Project Blue Book relating to the investigations of unidentified flying objects. Project Blue Book has been declassified. The project allegedly closed in 1969. We have received numerous inquiries concerning documents identified as MJ12 and briefing documents titled Operation Majestic 12. We have made extensive searches among the records in our custody of the U.S. Air Force and the Joint Chiefs of Staff to identify these documents. The project is concerning the subjects MJ12, majestic unidentified flying objects, UFOs, flying saucers, extraterrestrial biological entities, and Aquarius. They identify MJ12 as being directly involved in Project Blue Book. From 1947 to 1969, the Air Force investigated unidentified flying objects under Project Blue Book. The project, headquartered at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. In the Blue Book, they investigated a total of 12,618 sightings that were reported, and 701 remained unidentified. Operation Paperclip was a secret United States intelligence program in which more than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians were taken from former Nazi Germany to the U.S. for government employment after the end of World War II in Europe, between 1945 and 59. Project Paperclip, U.S. government program that sponsored the post, World War II immigration of German and Austrian scientists and technicians to the United States in order to exploit their knowledge for military and industrial purposes. The program was run by the newly formed Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, JIWA, whose goal was to harness German intellectual resources to help develop America's arsenal of rockets and other biological and chemical weapons, and to ensure such coveted information did not fall into the hands of the Soviet Union. Although he officially sanctioned the operation, President Harry Truman forbade the agency from recruiting any Nazi members or active Nazi supporters. Nevertheless, officials within the JIOA and Office of Strategic Services, OSS, the forerunner to the CIA, bypassed this directive by eliminating or whitewashing incriminating evidence of possible war crimes from the scientists' records, believing their intelligence to be crucial to the country's post-war efforts. One of the most well-known recruits was Werner von Braun, the technical director at the Peenemünde Army Research Center in Germany, who was instrumental in developing the lethal V-2 rocket that devastated England during the war. Von Braun and other rocket scientists were brought to Fort Bliss, Texas, and White Sands Proving Grounds, New Mexico, as War Department special employees to assist the U.S. Army with rocket experimentation. Von Braun later became director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center and the chief architect of the Saturn V launch vehicle, which eventually propelled 24 American astronauts to the moon. Although defenders of the clandestine operation argue that the balance of power could have easily shifted to the Soviet Union during the Cold War if these Nazi scientists were not brought to the United States, opponents point to the ethical cost of ignoring their abhorrent war crimes without punishment or accountability. During the years following World War II, the government of the United States was confronted with a series of events which were to change beyond prediction its future, and with it the future of humanity. These events were so incredible that they defied belief. A stunned President Truman and his top military commanders found themselves virtually impotent after having just won the most devastating and costly war in history. The United States had developed, used, and was the only nation on Earth in possession of the atomic bomb, which alone had the potential to destroy any enemy and even the Earth itself. At that time, the United States had the best economy, the most advanced technology, the highest standard of living, exerted the most influence, and fielded the largest and most powerful military forces in history. We can only imagine the confusion and concern when the informed elite of the United States government discovered that an alien spacecraft piloted by insect-like beings from a totally incomprehensible culture had crashed in the desert of New Mexico. Between January 1947 and December 1952, at least 16 crashed or downed alien craft, 65 alien bodies, and 1 live alien were recovered. An additional alien craft had exploded, and nothing was recovered from that incident. Of these incidents, 13 occurred within the borders of the United States, not including the craft which disintegrated in the air. Of these 13, 1 was in Arizona, 11 were in New Mexico, and 1 was in Nevada. 3 occurred in foreign countries. Of those, 1 was in Norway, and the last 2 were in Mexico. Sightings of UFOs were so numerous that serious investigation and debunking of each report became impossible utilizing the existing intelligence assets. An alien craft was found on February 13, 1948 on a mesa near Aztec, New Mexico. Another craft was located on March 25, 1948 in Hart Canyon near Aztec, New Mexico. It was 100 feet in diameter. A total of 17 alien bodies were recovered from those 2 craft. Of even greater significance was the discovery of a large number of human body parts stored within both of these vehicles. A demon had reared its ugly head, and paranoia quickly took hold of everyone then in the know. The secret lid immediately became an above-top secret lid and was screwed down tight. The security blanket was even tighter than that imposed upon the Manhattan Project. In the coming years, these events were to become the most closely guarded secrets in the history of the world. A special group of America's top scientists were organized, and a program under the name Project Sign was created in December of 1947 to study the phenomenon. The whole nasty business was contained within the shroud of secrecy. Project Sign evolved into Project Grudge in December of 1948. A low-level collection and disinformation project named Blue Book was formed under Grudge. 16 volumes were to come out of Grudge, including the controversial Grudge 13 Inches, which was revealed to the public. Blue teams were put together to recover the crashed discs and dead or alive aliens. The blue teams were later to evolve into alpha teams under Project Pounce and Project Pluto, EBE. During these early years, the United States Air Force and the CIA exercised complete control over the alien secret. In fact, the CIA was formed by Presidential Executive Order First as the Central Intelligence Group for the express purpose of dealing with the alien presence. Later, the National Security Act, NSA, was established to oversee the intelligence community and especially the alien endeavor. A series of National Security Council memos and executive orders removed the CIA from the sole task of gathering foreign intelligence and slowly but thoroughly legalized direct action in the form of covert activities at home and abroad. On December 9, 1947, Truman approved issuance of NSC-4 entitled Coordination of Foreign Intelligence Information Measures at the urging of Secretaries Marshall, Forrestal, Patterson, and the Director of the State Department's Policy Planning Staff, Kennan. The Foreign and Military Intelligence, Book 1. Final report of the Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities. United States Senate, 94th Congress, Second Session, Report Number 94, 755, April 26, 1976, page 49 states, "This directive empowered the Secretary of State to coordinate overseas information activities designed to counter communism. A top-secret annex to NSC-4, NSC-4A, instructed the Director of Central Intelligence to undertake covert psychological activities in pursuit of the aims set forth in NSC-4. The initial authority given the CIA for covert operations under NSC-4A did not establish formal procedures for either coordinating or approving these operations. It simply directed the DCI to undertake covert actions and ensure, through liaison with state and defense, that the resulting operations were consistent with American policy. Later, NSC-10-1 and NSC-10-2 were to supersede NSC-4 and NSC-4A and expand the covert abilities even further. The Office of Policy Coordination, OPC, was chartered to carry out an expanded program of covert activities. NSC-10-1 and NSC-10-2 validated illegal and extra-legal practices and procedures as being agreeable to the national security leadership. The reaction was swift. In the eyes of the intelligence community, no holes were barred. Under NSC-10-1, an executive coordination group was established to review but not approve covert project proposals. The CG was secretly tasked to coordinate the alien projects. NSC-10-1 and NSC-10-2 were interpreted to mean that no one at the top wanted to know about anything until it was over and successful. These actions established a buffer between the president and the information. It was intended that this buffer serve as a means for the president to deny knowledge if leaks divulged the true state of affairs. This buffer was used in later years for the purpose of effectively isolating succeeding presidents from the knowledge of the alien presence other than what the secret government and the intelligence community wanted them to know. NSC-10-2 established a study panel which met secretly and was made up of scientific minds of the day. The study panel was not called MJ12. Another NSC memo, NSC-10-5, further outlined the duties of the study panel. These NSC memos and secret executive orders set the stage for the creation of MJ12 only 4 years later. Secretary of Defense James Forrestal began to object to the secrecy. He was a very idealistic and religious man who believed that the public should be told. When he began to talk to leaders of the opposition party and leaders of Congress about the alien problem, he was asked to resign by Truman. He expressed his fears to many people and rightfully believed that he was being watched. This was interpreted by those who were ignorant of the facts as paranoia. Forrestal later was said to have suffered a mental breakdown and was admitted to Bethesda Naval Hospital. In fact, it was feared that Forrestal would begin to talk again and he had to be isolated and discredited. Sometime in the early morning of May 22, 1949, agents of the CIA tied a sheet around his neck, fastened the other end to a fixture in his room, and threw James Forrestal out the window. The sheet tore and he plummeted to his death. He became one of the first victims of the cover-up. The live alien that had been taken from the 1947 Roswell crash was named EBE. The name had been suggested by Dr. Vannevar Bush and was short for Extraterrestrial Biological Entity. EBE had a tendency to lie and for over a year would give only the desired answer to questions asked. Those questions which would have resulted in an undesirable answer went unanswered. At some point during the second year of captivity, he began to open up and the information derived from EBE was startling, to say the least. This EBE was named J-Rod. This compilation of his revelations became the foundation of what would later be called the Yellow Book. Photographs and videos were taken of EBE. In late 1951, EBE became ill. Medical personnel had been unable to determine the cause of EBE's illness and had no background from which to draw. EBE's system was chlorophyll-based, and he processed food into energy much the same as plants. Waste material was excreted the same as plants. It was decided that an expert on botany was called for. A botanist, Dr. Guillermo Mendoza, was brought in to try and help him recover. Dr. Mendoza worked to save EBE until mid-1952 when EBE died. Dr. Mendoza became an expert on alien biology. In a futile attempt to save EBE and to gain favor with this technologically superior alien race, the United States began broadcasting a call for help early in 1952 into the vast regions of space. The call went unanswered, but the project continued as an effort of good faith. President Truman created the super-secret National Security Agency by secret executive order on November 4, 1952. Its primary purpose was to decipher the alien communications and language and establish a dialogue with the aliens. This most urgent task was a continuation of the earlier effort and was codenamed Sigma. The secondary purpose of the NSA was to monitor all communications and emissions from any and all devices worldwide for the purpose of gathering intelligence, both human and alien, and to contain the secret of the alien presence. Project Sigma was successful. The NSA also maintains communications with the Luna base and other secret space programs. By executive order, the NSA is exempt from all laws, which do not specifically name the NSA in the text of the law as being subject to that law. That means that if the agency is not spelled out in the text of any and every law passed by the Congress, it is not subject to that or those laws. The NSA now performs many other duties and, in fact, is the premier agency within the intelligence community. Today, NSA receives 75% of the monies allotted to the intelligence community. The old saying, "Where the money goes therein, the power resides," is true. The DCI today is a figurehead maintained as a public ruse. The primary task of the NSA is still alien communications, but now includes other alien projects as well. President Truman had been keeping our allies, including the Soviet Union, informed of the developing alien problem since the Roswell recovery. This had been done in case the aliens turned out to be a threat to the human race. Plans were formulated to defend the Earth in case of invasion. Great difficulty was encountered in maintaining international secrecy. It was decided that an outside group was necessary to coordinate and control international efforts in order to hide the secret from the normal scrutiny of governments by the press. The result was the formation of a secret society known as the Bilderbergers. The headquarters of this group is in Geneva, Switzerland. The Bilderbergers evolved into a secret world government that now controls everything. The United Nations was then, and is now, an international joke. In 1953, a new man occupied the White House. He was a man used to a structured staff organization with a chain of command. His method was to delegate authority and rule by committee. He made major decisions, but only when his advisors were unable to come to consensus. His normal method was to read through or listen to several alternatives and then approve one. Those who worked closely with him have stated that his favorite comment was, "Just do whatever it takes." He spent a lot of time on the golf course. This was not all unusual for a man who had been career Army, with the ultimate position of Supreme Allied Commander during the war, a post which carried 5 stars along with it. This president was General of the Army Dwight David Eisenhower. During his first year in office, 1953, at least 10 more alien crash discs were recovered, along with 26 dead and 4 live aliens. Of the 10, 4 were found in Arizona, 2 in Texas, 1 in New Mexico, 1 in Louisiana, 1 in Montana, and 1 in South Africa. There were hundreds of sightings. Eisenhower knew that he had to wrestle and beat the alien problem. He knew that he could not do it by revealing the secret to the Congress. Early in 1953, the new president turned to his friend and fellow member of the Council on Foreign Relations, Nelson Rockefeller, for help with the alien problem. Eisenhower and Rockefeller began planning the secret structure of alien task supervision, which was to become a reality within 1 year. The idea for MJ12 was thus born. It was Nelson's uncle Winthrop Aldrich who had been crucial in convincing Eisenhower to run for president. The whole Rockefeller family, and with them, the Rockefeller Empire, had solidly backed Ike. Asking Rockefeller for help with the alien problem was to be the biggest mistake Eisenhower ever made for the future of the United States and most probably all of humanity. Within 1 week of Eisenhower's election, he had appointed Nelson Rockefeller chairman of a Presidential Advisory Committee on Government Organization. Rockefeller was responsible for planning the reorganization of the government. New Deal programs went into one single cabinet position called the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. When the Congress approved the new cabinet position in April of 1953, Nelson was named to the post of Undersecretary to Oveta Culp Hobby. In 1953, astronomers discovered large objects in space which were moving towards Earth. It was first believed that they were asteroids. Later evidence proved that the objects could only be spaceships. Project Sigma intercepted alien radio communication. When the objects reached the Earth, they took up a very high orbit around the equator. There were several huge ships, and their actual intent was unknown. Project Sigma and a new project, Plato, through radio communications using the computer binary language, was able to arrange a landing that resulted in face-to-face contact with alien beings from Orion. They are called the Markabian Greys. Project Plato was tasked with establishing diplomatic relations with this alien race of space aliens. In the meantime, another race of human-looking aliens called the Najaru or the Natari people contacted the US government. This alien group warned us against the aliens that were orbiting the equator and offered to help us with our spiritual development. They demanded that we dismantle and destroy our nuclear weapons as the major condition. They refused to exchange technology, citing that we were spiritually unable to handle the technology which we then possessed. They believed that we would use any new technology to destroy each other. This race stated that we were on a path of self-destruction, and we must stop killing each other, stop polluting the Earth, stop raping the Earth's natural resources, and learn to live in harmony. These terms were met with extreme suspicion, especially the major condition of nuclear disarmament. It was believed that meeting that condition would leave us helpless in the face of an obvious alien threat. We also had nothing in history to help with the decision. Nuclear disarmament was not considered to be within the best interest of the United States. The overtures were rejected. These same beings would later meet with JFK in 1962 and reiterate their concerns about using nuclear-style weapons. Backtracking, in 1954, the race of large-nosed gray aliens which had been orbiting the Earth landed at Holloman Air Force Base. A basic agreement was reached. This race identified themselves as originating from a planet around a red star in the constellation of Orion, which we call Betelgeuse. They stated that their planet was dying and that at some unknown future time they wouldn't be able to survive there. This led to a second landing at Edwards Air Force Base. The historical event had been planned in advance and details of the treaty had been agreed upon. Eisenhower arranged to be in Palm Springs on vacation. On the appointed day, the president was spirited away to the base, and the excuse was given to the press that he was visiting a dentist. President Eisenhower met with the aliens, and a formal treaty between the alien nation and the United States of America was signed. We then received our first alien ambassador from outer space. His name and title was His Omnipotent Highness Krill, pronounced Krill. In the American tradition of disdain for royal titles, he was secretly called Original Hostage Krill. You should know that the alien flag is known as the Trilateral Insignia. It is displayed on their craft and worn on their uniforms. Both of these landings and the second meeting were filmed. The films exist today. The treaty stated, the aliens would not interfere in our affairs, and we would not interfere in theirs. We would keep their presence on Earth a secret. They would furnish us with advanced technology and would help us in our technological development. They would not make any treaty with any other Earth nation. They could abduct humans on a limited and periodic basis for the purpose of medical examination and monitoring of our development, with the stipulation that the humans would not be harmed, would be returned to their point of abduction, that the humans would have no memory of the event, and that the alien nation would furnish MJ12 a list of all human contacts and abductees on a regularly scheduled basis. It was agreed that each nation would receive the ambassador of the other for as long as the treaty remained in force. It was further agreed that the alien nation and the United States would exchange 16 personnel each to the other with the purpose of learning each of the other. Underground bases. The alien guests would remain on Earth, and the human guests would travel to the alien point of origin for a specified period of time, then return, at which point a reverse exchange would be made. It was also agreed that bases would be constructed underground for the use of the alien nation, and that 2 bases would be constructed for the joint use the alien nation and the United States government. Exchange of technology would take place in the jointly occupied bases. These alien bases would be constructed under Indian reservations in the Four Corners area of Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado, and one would be constructed in Nevada in the area known as S4, located approximately 7 miles south of the western border of Area 51. All alien bases are under complete control of the Department of Naval Intelligence, and all personnel who work in these complexes receive their checks from the Navy. Construction of the bases began immediately, but progress was slow until large amounts of money were made available in 1957. Work continued on the Yellow Book. Project Red Light was formed, and experimentation in test-flying alien aircraft was begun in earnest. A super top-secret facility was built at Groom Lake in Nevada in the midst of the weapons test range. It was code-named Dreamland. The installation was placed under the Department of the Navy, and clearance of all personnel required Q clearance as well as executive presidential approval. This is ironic due to the fact that the President of the United States does not have clearance to visit the site. The alien base and exchange of technology actually took place in an area known as S4. Area S4 was codenamed the Dark Side of the Moon. The Army was tasked to form a super-secret organization to furnish security for all alien-tasked projects. This organization became the National Reconnaissance Organization based at Fort Carson, Colorado. The specific teams trained to secure the projects were called Delta. A second project code named Snowbird was promulgated to explain away any sightings of the red light crafts as being Air Force experiments. The Snowbird crafts were manufactured using conventional technology and were flown for the press on several occasions. Project Snowbird was also used to debunk legitimate public sightings of alien craft, UFOs. Project Snowbird was very successful, and reports from the public declined steadily until recent years. A multi-million-dollar secret fund was organized and kept by the military office of the White House. This fund was used to build over 75 deep underground facilities. Presidents who asked were told the fund was used to build deep underground shelters for the president in case of war. Only a few were built for the president. Millions of dollars were funneled through this office to MJ12 and then out to the contractors, and was used to build top-secret alien bases as well as top-secret D.U.M.B, deep underground military bases, and facilities promulgated by Alternative 2 throughout the nation. President Johnson used this fund to build a movie theater and pave the road on his ranch. He had no idea of its purpose. The secret White House Underground Construction Fund was set up in 1957 by President Eisenhower. The funding was obtained from Congress under the guise of construction and maintenance of secret sites where the president could be taken in case of military attack, presidential emergency sites. The sites are literally holes in the ground, deep enough to withstand a nuclear blast, and are outfitted with state-of-the-art communications equipment. To date, there are more than 75 sites spread around the country which were built using money from this fund. The Atomic Energy Commission has built at least an additional 22 underground sites. The location and everything to do with these sites were and are considered and treated as top secret. The money was and is in control of the military office of the White House, and was and is laundered through a circuitous web that even the most knowledgeable spy or accountant cannot follow. As of 1980, only a few at the beginning and end of this web knew what the money was for. At the beginning were Representative George Mon of Texas and the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee and of its Defense Subcommittee, and Representative Robert Sykes of Florida, chairman of the House Appropriations Military Construction Subcommittee. Today it is rumored that House Speaker Jim Wright controls the money in Congress, and that a power struggle is underway to remove him. At the end of the line were the President, MJ12, the Director of the Military Office, and a commander at the Washington Navy Yard. The money was authorized by the Appropriation Committee, who allocated it to the Department of Defense as a top-secret item in the Army construction program. The Army, however, could not spend it and in fact did not even know what it was for. Authorization to spend the money was in reality given to the Navy. The money was channeled to the Chesapeake Division of the Navy Engineers, who did not know what it was for either. Not even the commanding officer, who was an admiral, knew what the fund was to be used for. Only one man, a Navy commander who was assigned to the Chesapeake Division, but in reality was responsible only to the military office of the White House, knew of the actual purpose, amount, and ultimate destination of the top-secret fund. The total secrecy surrounding the fund meant that almost every trace of it could be made to disappear by the very few people who controlled it. There has never been, and most likely never will be, an audit of this secret money. Large amounts of money were transferred from the top secret fund to a location at Palm Beach, Florida, that belongs to the Coast Guard called Peanut Island. The island is adjacent to property which was unwed by Joseph Kennedy. The money was said to have been used for landscaping and general beautification. Some time ago, a TV news special on the Kennedy assassination told of a Coast Guard officer transferring money in a briefcase to a Kennedy employee across this property line. Could this have been a secret payment to the Kennedy family for the loss of their son, John F. Kennedy? The payments continued through the year 1967 and then stopped. The total amount transferred is unknown, and the actual use of the money is unknown. Meanwhile, Nelson Rockefeller changed positions again. This time he was to take C.D. Jackson's old position, which had been called the Special Assistant for Psychological Strategy. With Nelson's appointment, the name was changed to the Special Assistant for Cold War Strategy. This position would evolve over the years into the same position Henry Kissinger was ultimately to hold under President Nixon. Officially, he was to give advice and assistance in development of increased understanding and cooperation among all peoples. The official description was a smokescreen for security. He was the presidential coordinator for the intelligence community. In his new post, Rockefeller reported directly, and only, to the president. He attended meetings of the Cabinet, the Council on Foreign Economic Policy, and the National Security Council, which was the highest policy-making body in the government. Nelson Rockefeller was also given a second important job as the head of a secret unit called the Planning Coordination Group, which was formed under NSC 5412/1 in March of 1955. The group consisted of different ad hoc members depending on the subject of the agenda. The basic members were Rockefeller, a representative of the Department of State, and the Director of Central Intelligence. It was soon called the 3412 Committee of the Special Group. NSC 5412/1 established the rule that covert operations were subject to approval by an executive committee, whereas in the past, these operations were initiated solely on the authority of the Director of Central Intelligence. By secret executive memorandum, NSC 5410, Eisenhower had preceded NSC 5412/1 in 1954 to establish a permanent committee, not ad hoc, to be known as Majority 12, MJ12, to oversee and conduct all covert activities concerned with the alien question. NSC 5412/1 was created to explain the purpose of these meetings when Congress and the press became curious. Majority 12 was made up of Nelson Rockefeller, the director of the CIA Alan Welsh Dulles, the Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, the Secretary of Defense Charles E. Wilson, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Admiral Arthur W. Radford, the director of the FBI J. Edgar Hoover, and 6 men from the Executive Committee of the Council on Foreign Relations known as the Wise Men. These men were all members of a secret society of scholars that called themselves the Jason Society, or the Jason Scholars, who recruited their members from the Skull and Bones and the Scroll and Key Societies of Harvard and Yale. The Wise Men were key members of the Council on Foreign Relations. There were 12 members, including the first 6 from government positions, thus Majority 12. This group was made up over the years of the top officers and directors of the Council on Foreign Relations and later the Trilateral Commission. Gordon Dean, George Bush, and Zbigniew Brzezinski were among them. The most important and influential of the Wise Men who served on MJ12 were Joggin McCloy, Robert Lovett, Averell Harriman, Charles Bolin, George Kennan, and Dean Acheson. It is significant that President Eisenhower, as well as the first 6 MJ12 members from the government, were also members of the Council on Foreign Relations. Thorough researchers will soon discover that not all of the Wise Men attended Harvard or Yale, and not all of them were chosen for Skull and Bones or Scroll and Key membership during their college years. You will be able to quickly clear up this mystery by obtaining the book The Wise Men by Walter Isaacson and even Thomas Simon & Schuster, New York. Under illustration #9 in the center of the book, you will find the caption, "Lovett with the Yale unit, above far right and on the beach his initiation into Skull and Bones came at an airbase near Dunkirk." I have found that members were chosen on an ongoing basis by invitation based upon merit post-college and was not confined to only Harvard or Yale attendees. A chosen few were later initiated into the Jason Society. They are all members of the Council on Foreign Relations, and at that time were known as the Eastern Establishment. This should give you a clue to the far-reaching and serious nature of these most secret college societies. The Jason Society is alive and well today, but now includes members of the Trilateral Commission as well. The Trilateralists existed secretly several years before 1973. The name of the Trilateral Commission was taken from the alien flag known as the Trilateral Insignia. Majority 12 was to survive right up to the present day. Under Eisenhower and Kennedy, it was erroneously called the 8412 Committee, or more correctly, the Special Group. In the Johnson administration, it became the 303 Committee, because the name 5412 had been compromised in the book The Secret Government, actually NSC 5412/1, was leaked to the author to hide existence of NSC 5410. Under Nixon, Ford, and Carter, it was called the 40 Committee, and under Reagan, it became the PI 40 Committee. Over all those years, only the name changed. By 1955, it became obvious the aliens had deceived Eisenhower and had broken the treaty. Mutilated humans were being found along with mutilated animals all across the United States. It was suspected that the aliens were not submitting a complete list of human contacts and abductees to MJ12, and it was suspected that not all abductees had been returned. The Soviet Union was suspected of interacting with them, and this proved to be true. It was learned that the aliens had been and were then manipulating masses of people through secret societies, witchcraft, magic, the occult, and religion. After several Air Force combat air engagements with alien craft, it also became apparent that our weapons were no match against them. In November 1955, NSC 5412 halves was issued, establishing a study committee to explore all factors which are involved in making and implementing a foreign policy in the nuclear age. This was only a blanket of snow that covered the real subject of study, the alien question. Another major finding was the aliens were using humans and animals for a source of glandular secretions, enzymes, hormonal secretions, blood, and in horrible genetic experiments. The aliens explained these actions as necessary to their survival. They stated that their genetic structure had deteriorated and that they were no longer able to reproduce. They stated that if they were unable to improve their genetic structure, their race would soon cease to exist. We looked upon their explanations with extreme suspicion. Since our weapons were literally useless against the aliens, MJ12 decided to continue friendly diplomatic relations with them until such time as we were able to develop a technology which would enable us to challenge them on a military basis. Overtures would have to be made to the Soviet Union and other nations to join forces for the survival of humanity. In the meantime, plans were developed to research and construct 2 weapon systems using conventional and nuclear technology, which would hopefully bring us to parity. The results of the research were projects Joshua and Excalibur. Joshua was a weapon captured from the Germans, which at that time was capable of shattering 4 inches thick armor plate at a range of 2 miles using low-frequency sound waves. And it was believed that this weapon would be effective against the alien craft and beam weapons. Excalibur was a weapon carried by missile not to exceed 30,000 feet, AGL, not to deviate from designated target more than 50 meters, would penetrate 1,000 meters of tufa hard-packed soil such as that found in New Mexico, would carry a 1 megaton warhead, and was intended for use in destroying the aliens in their underground bases. Joshua was developed successfully, but never used to my knowledge. Excalibur was not pushed until recent years, and now there is an unprecedented effort to develop this weapon. The events at Fatima in the early part of the century were scrutinized. On suspicion that it was alien manipulation, an intelligence operation was put into motion to penetrate the secrecy surrounding the event. The United States utilized its Vatican moles that had been recruited and nurtured during Wedi II, and soon obtained the entire Vatican study, which included the prophecy. This prophecy stated that if man did not turn from evil and place himself at the feet of Christ, the planet would self-destruct, and the events described in the Book of Revelations would indeed come to pass. It stated that a child would be born who would unite the world with a plan for world peace and a false religion. The people would discern that he was evil and was indeed the Antichrist. World War III would begin in the Middle East with an invasion of Israel by a united Arab nation using conventional weapons, which would culminate in a nuclear holocaust in between the year 2025 to 2029. When the aliens were confronted with this finding, they confirmed that it was true. The aliens explained that they had created us through hybridization and had manipulated the human race through religion, Satanism, witchcraft, magic, and the occult. They further explained that they were capable of time travel, and the events would indeed come to pass. Later exploitation of alien technology by the United States and the Soviet Union utilizing time travel supposedly confirmed the prophecy. The aliens supposedly showed a hologram which they claimed was the actual crucifixion of Christ, which the government filmed. Ha ha ha, these Markabian Greys are full of shit. I wonder what race was Jesus in their film. We don't trust them at all. By secret executive order of President Eisenhower, the Jason scholars were ordered to study this scenario and make recommendations called Alternatives 1, 2, and 3. Alternative 1 was to use nuclear devices to blast holes in the stratosphere from which the heat and pollution would escape into space. Change the human cultures from that of exploitation into cultures of environmental protection. Of the three, this was decided to be the least likely to succeed due to the inherent nature of man and the additional damage the nuclear explosions would themselves create. Alternative 2 was to build a vast network of underground cities and tunnels in which a select representation of all cultures and occupations would survive and carry on the human race. The rest of humanity would be left to fend for themselves on the surface of the planet. Alternative 3 was to exploit the alien and conventional technology in order for a select few to leave the Earth and establish colonies in outer space. I am not able to confirm nor deny the existence of batch consignments of human slaves, which would be used for the manual labor in the effort as part of the plan. The moon, codenamed Adam, would be the object of primary interest, followed by the planet Mars, codenamed Eve. As a delaying action, all three alternatives included birth control, sterilization, and the introduction of deadly microbes to control or slow the growth of the Earth's population. AIDS is only one result of these plans. There are others. It was decided, since the population must be reduced and controlled, that it would be in the best interest of the human race to rid ourselves of the undesirable elements of our society. The joint US and Soviet leadership dismissed Alternative 1, but ordered work to begin on Alternative 2 and 3 virtually at the same time. In 1959, the RAND Corporation hosted a deep underground construction symposium. In the symposium report, machines are pictured and described which could bore a tunnel 45 feet in diameter at the rate of 5 feet per hour. It also displays pictures of huge tunnels and underground vaults containing what appear to be complex facilities and possibly even cities. It appears that the previous 5 years of all-out underground construction had made significant progress by that time. The ruling powers decided that one means of funding the alien-connected and other black market projects was to corner the illegal drug market. A young, ambitious member of the Council on Foreign Relations was approached. His name is George Bush, who at the time was president and CEO of Zapata Oil, based in Texas. Zapata Oil was experimenting with the new technology of offshore drilling. It was correctly thought that the drugs could be shipped from South America to the offshore platforms by a fishing boat, where it would then be taken to shore by the normal transportation used for supplies and personnel. By this method, no customs or law enforcement agency would subject the cargo to search. George Bush agreed to help and organized the operation in conjunction with the CIA. The plan worked better than anyone had thought and has since expanded worldwide, and there are now many other methods of bringing the illegal drugs into the country. The CIA now controls all the world's illegal drug markets. The official space program was boosted by President Kennedy in his inaugural address when he mandated that the United States put a man on the moon before the end of the decade. Although innocent in its conception, this mandate enabled those in charge to funnel vast amounts of money into black projects and conceal the real space program from the American people. A similar program in the Soviet Union served the same purpose. In fact, a joint alien, United States, and Soviet Union base already existed on the moon at the very moment Kennedy spoke the words. On May 22, 1962, a space probe landed on Mars and confirmed the existence of an environment which could support life. Not long afterward, the construction of a colony on the planet Mars began in earnest. Today, cities exist on Mars populated by specifically selected people from different cultures and occupations taken from all over the Earth. a public charade of antagonism between the Soviet Union and the United States, has been maintained over all these years in order to fund projects in the name of national defense when in fact, we are the closest allies. At some point, President Kennedy discovered portions of the truth concerning the drugs and the aliens. He issued an ultimatum in 1963 to MJ12. President Kennedy assured them that if they didn't clean up the drug problem, he would. He informed MJ12 that he intended to reveal the presence of aliens to the American people within the following year and ordered a plan developed to implement his decision. Also, he was going to tell the public that Negro-looking aliens came to the White House and we had no power over them. President Kennedy was not a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and know nothing of Alternative 2 or Alternative 3. Internationally, the operations were supervised by MJ12 and in the Soviet Union by its sister organization. President Kennedy's decision struck fear into the hearts of those in charge. His assassination was ordered by the Policy Committee, and the order was carried out by agents of MJ12 in Dallas. President John F. Kennedy was murdered by the Secret Service agent who drove his car in the motorcade, and the act is plainly visible in the film. Watch the driver and not Kennedy when you view the film. All of the witnesses who were close enough to the car to see William Greer shoot Kennedy were themselves all murdered within the next 2 years of the event. The Warren Commission was a farce, and Council on Foreign Relations members made up the majority of its panel. They succeeded in snowing the American people. Many other patriots who attempted to reveal the alien secret have also been murdered throughout the intervening years. During the era of the United States' initial space exploration and the moon landings, every launch was accompanied by alien craft. A moon base dubbed Luna was sighted and filmed by the Apollo astronauts. Domes, spires, tall round structures which look like silos, huge T-shaped mining vehicles which left stitch-like tracks in the lunar surface, and extremely large as well as small alien craft appear in the photographs. It is a joint United States, Russian, and alien base. The space program is a farce, an unbelievable waste of money. Alternative 3 is a reality and is not at all science fiction. Most of the Apollo astronauts were severely shaken by this experience, and their lives and subsequent statements reflect the depth of the revelation and the effect of the muzzle order which followed. They were ordered to remain silent or suffer extreme penalty, death, which was termed an expediency. One astronaut actually did talk to the British producers of the TV expose Alternative 3 Inches, confirming many of the allegations. In the book Alternative 003, the pseudonym Bob Groden was used in place of the astronaut's identity. It was also stated that he committed suicide in 1978. This cannot be validated by any source, and I believe that several so-called facts in the book are disinformation. I firmly believe that this disinformation is a result of pressure put upon authors and is meant to nullify the effect upon the populace of the British TV expose entitled Alternative 3. The headquarters of the international conspiracy is in Geneva, Switzerland. The ruling body is made up of representatives of the governments involved as well as the executive members of the group known as the Bilderbergers. Meetings are held by the Policy Committee, when necessary, on a nuclear submarine beneath the polar ice cap. The secrecy is such that this was the only method which would ensure that the meetings would not be bugged. I can say that the book is at least 70% true from my own knowledge and the knowledge of my sources. I believe that the disinformation was an attempt to compromise the British TV expose with information which could be proven false, just as the Eisenhower briefing document was released here in the US under the contingency plan Majestic 12, and which can also be proven false. Since our interaction with the aliens began, we have come into possession of technology beyond our wildest dreams. A craft named Aurora exists at Area 51 which makes regular trips into space. It is a one-stage ship called a TAVI, Transatmospheric Vehicle, and it can take off from the ground using a 7-mile runway, go into high orbit, return on its own power, and land on the same runway. We currently have and fly atomic-powered alien-type craft at Area S4 in Nevada. Our pilots have made interplanetary voyages in these craft and have been to the Moon, Mars, and other planets aboard these craft. We have been lied to about the true nature of the Moon, the planets Mars and Venus, and the real state of technology that we possess today at this very moment. There are areas on the Moon where plant life grows and even changes color with the seasons. This seasonal effect is because the Moon does not, as claimed, always present the exact same side to the Earth or the Sun. There is an area that wobbles in and out of darkness on a seasonal basis, and it is near this area that the plant life grows. The moon does have a few man-made lakes and ponds upon its surface, and clouds have been observed and filmed in its atmosphere. It possesses a gravitational field, and man can walk upon its surface without a spacesuit breathing from an oxygen bottle after undergoing decompression, the same as any deep-sea diver. I have seen the photographs, and some of them were actually published in the book We Discovered Alien Bases on the Moon by Fred Steckling. In 1969, a confrontation broke out between the human scientists and the aliens at the Dulce Underground Lab. The aliens took many of our scientists hostage. Delta forces were sent to free them, but were no match against the alien weapons. 66 of our people were killed during this action. As a result, we withdrew from all joint projects for at least 2 years. A reconciliation eventually took place, and once again we began to interact. Today, the alliance continues.